Did you have any experiences while you were traveling where you really questioned where you were at and made you want to go home because of the comfort?
I mean, definitely, like, there was times that were, like, financially really hard. When I was living in Austria, I went there to snowboard, and I worked at a pizzeria making pizzas and washing dishes. I was, like, 22 or 23 years old. It was, like, the best season for snowboarding. All the locals even said that. Like, I was so happy to get on the mountain all day, every day. Like, literally got up the mountain every single day, and that's why I was there. But the owners of the restaurant like didn't pay me anything. They didn't speak any English, which was really hard and got frustrating. They let me eat there for free, but they definitely took advantage of me as a worker like we do in America here with immigrants, especially being that I was working under the table. You know, they knew that I like was relying on them.
Yeah.
So I just remember just like literally having no money. I think that whole, you know, maybe I was there 7 months.
Wow.
I don't think that I ate out at another restaurant more than once or twice. Every day I just ate the free food I was allowed at the restaurant I worked at. I bought like just pastas, all I could afford for dinner. I stole a big toilet paper roll from the mountain, the ski mountain. Like that doesn't even fit on like a toilet paper roll that we have at home, like the big industrial toilet paper rolls. I brought my backpack. I took it. That was all I needed was toilet paper, and I had food at the restaurant. Like, it was financially tough, but I lived with 7 people in a 2-bedroom house. No one was from America. You know, there's no Wi-Fi anywhere. There's no iPhones. There's, you know, not much even internet in the village. No one in the village spoke English. There's like this traveling group called Kontiki. For like 18 plus. It's just like a bus that goes all around Europe, and like 18 plus can stop in this little town I lived at. So every week there was some English speaking people coming through and then leaving, and the next week coming through and leaving.
By and large, you were on your own.
I was on my own. Yeah. There was times then that I was like, home would be nice. I want someone to cook for me. I want someplace warm. The shower would get cold in 2 seconds.
How have you learned to better support yourself when you are feeling isolated like that? And it's important to put some context on that. The world has probably never felt more isolated than it is right now through and after the pandemic. More people than ever are disconnected. Our jobs are remote. Our relationships are remote. There's a lot of isolation going on in the world. I think many people would be curious to hear your perspective coming from these experiences where you were forced into maybe not isolation, you were with people, but you were very much supporting yourself and by yourself, and you're like your own support system.
Well, I didn't have enough money to go home even if I wanted to. If I begged my parents, they like would have helped me.
But how do you deal with that emotionally?
Yeah. I didn't want to like fail and like be the loser going back to my hometown, like after trying to do another being abroad thing. So I forced myself to stay for that reason. Like I didn't want to come home before the snowboard season ended and just look like a failure. So I just forced myself to stay, and then I stayed, and I was happy I stayed. And then I moved to another country after that, and that had hardship too, but happy I did it.
So it was this cycle of moving to a place, experiencing it, having a great time, sometimes experiencing some sort of difficulty that made you want to leave, but pushing through, partly because you enjoyed it, partly because you didn't want the image associated with you that you weren't capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And then pushing through that barrier, it started to be enjoyable again, and you'd be like, all right, I'll do this again in a new country.
Exactly. I knew that I didn't want to go home and have like a real job, like a corporate job either. And I had graduated college, and that's what all my friends were doing, and I just had zero interest in that. So it was like, if I have like another trip planned, like the more I could avoid going to some corporate job where back then that's what you do. You get out of college and you get a job. Like,
what are the drawbacks of that perspective of wanting to travel and do this thing that you're doing and not wanting the corporate job?
For me back then, it was not feeling like I could relate to, back then it felt like Americans, because at that point in my life at 22 years old, I'd already been to like probably 17 to 20 countries and had friends from so many different countries, like better friends from another country that I would stay in touch with more. Yeah. I had met years prior than, you know, I always have my childhood friends, but better friends than pretty much my American friends. So whenever I would go back to the States, and if I started talking to someone about my travels, it was people didn't really know. I mean, no one had really experienced what I'd experienced. So it's just like, what's your favorite country? Oh, that's so cool. And they had nothing else to relate to. And like, you know, my mind was just blown with all these amazing adventures that I had had at the time, was why I didn't want to like go back to America and get settled in a job. It's just everything about that felt boring, because what I was so passionate about, which was traveling, like no one else could relate to me.